Welcome to another edition of Dan Frequently Asked Questions. In this edition, we're going to address vertigo as a result of doing shallow dives in a commercial diver. Keep watching. We got a question from a commercial diver who does what is called dredge work. And as the name suggests, it's actually sucking up mud from the bottom of a harbor or river or some construction site, and in the process it often involves a lot of so-called yo-yo or bounces up and down from 5 to 10 feet as the person described, or if you like 2 to 3, 4 meters. And they describe that whenever they come to the surface they experience vertigo, and the vertigo sometimes lasts for a while and in fact persists in the water, especially when they equalize, and to the extent that they sometimes need to lie at the bottom to actually have the vertigo abate. What are they missing? What is going on? What should they do? Well, first of all, with the type of excursions that you have, we can eliminate decompression illness as a cause, because the amount of inert gas that you would accumulate, even if you were to spend hours there, is well below the threshold that you would produce bubbles. You have to in fact saturate at least at 6 meters for one to have bubble formation on return to the surface. So decompression sickness we can eliminate. Arterial gas embolism, of course, is possible, but the regularity with which you have the episodes of vertigo would not suggest that to be the cause. So what remains there is dynamics related to the ear. Now, when we consider vertigo in relation to diving, there are really 4 main mechanisms that we think of. And decompression illness of the inner ear we've already eliminated. So it's left essentially with inner ear barotrauma, which involves a fistula, inner ear barotrauma that involves irritation, and lastly so-called alternobaric vertigo. Now, if you had a fistula, you would have roaring, ringing in the ears, you would have vertigo that persists, and if you were to continue diving, you would really have difficulty and a sense of loss of hearing and complete incapacitation. So a fistula we can largely eliminate. So it leaves us essentially with mild inner ear irritation or alternobaric vertigo. Now, inner ear irritation can occur with regular bounces up and down, and essentially just the thumping of the oval window in and out, almost in a way that noise could irritate the cochlea or the hearing system. That is possible, but I don't think that is the most likely cause. So as far as I'm concerned, my sense is that this is a form of what we call alternobaric vertigo. And what that means is that in the process of equalizing, the one ear equalizes easier than the other, and or when you return to the surface, the one ear releases gas pressure more readily than the other. Why that's relevant is because of the difference in gas volume in the middle ear and the distension of the tympanic membrane outwards as a result of gas expanding in the middle ear relative to the other one that releases it more quickly. You actually have a change in the symmetry between the 2 ears. So the oval window follows the tympanic membrane on this side, whereas on the other side it doesn't really get pulled at all. The effect is a change in the configuration of the inner ear, which the body and brain then interprets as vertigo. So what to do about it? Well, the way to try and attenuate alternobaric vertigo really lies in optimizing Eustachian tube function, particularly if you're doing a lot of up and down dives. Now, also with dredge work, it may be that you have a lot of head down position work. And even though one is relatively neutrally buoyant in water, if you are in a position that you are head down, one still gets a bit of engorgement and it still affects the way in which you are able to equalize. So this may or may not be relevant, because sometimes one has essentially iron-clad boots or heavy boots, and you do it in a standing sort of position rather than in a lying or in a head-down type position. So that may or may not apply. But importantly, if you are able to improve the equalization in the middle ear, that is most likely going to solve your problem, because you do also describe that when blowing or equalizing the ear, the vertigo appears to be worse. And that is also consistent with alternobaric vertigo, or very rarely what is called a Tullio phenomenon. Now, Tullio, I don't want to really get into that. That is where there's actually a weakening of a part of the inner ear just below where the bone and the skull, or the brain and the skull, actually interface, and then sometimes there's a thinning of the membrane, and that can bulge, and that causes a vertiginous response with exposure to noise or exposure to sound or pressure. I don't think yours is severe enough to be a Tullio phenomenon, but I do think it seems like alternobaric vertigo. So in a nutshell then, what we're looking at is a difference between the two ears' ability to equalize or eliminate gas expansion on return to the surface, and that difference giving an irritation or a stimulation of the inner ear resulting in vertigo. Once the ears have stabilized again at the surface or at the bottom, then the vertigo goes away, which is exactly what you've described. What I would also like to know, if you want to comment on our comments, would be to determine whether or not you have concurrent hearing differences. So is there hearing difference or hearing loss, one ear versus the other, or is there tinnitus, ringing in the ear, one ear perhaps more than the other? That could also give us some pointers. If this persists, I would recommend you seeing an ENT, but in the meantime what you can try is the Otavent balloon, which is a balloon with a nozzle. You inflate the balloon, and then as the balloon deflates, you hold the nozzle in nose, you inflate it with the mouth, hold it in the nose, and as the balloon deflates, you swallow. And in the process, it basically stimulates or massages the eustachian tube. One side, other side, 3 times a day. And over a week, that usually gets the eustachian tubes loose and easier to equalize. The other thing that you can try is called a sinus rinse or nasal rinse using saline. There are many products on the market, and you can go to a pharmacy near you and they would be able to recommend that. What you do is you essentially irrigate the nose by getting saline on the one side of the nostril, running out the other side, and eliminating excess mucus and making it easier to equalize. I hope that solves the problem for you, but I'd be very interested to have follow-up after you've introduced these measures and whether we can get to the bottom of this or not. Okay, thank you very much for your question, and we really do welcome questions about ears and diadem because they're so common, and it gives us the opportunity to think through the possible causes. So until next time, for all of you, safe life.